you think that nothing could be more incredible than Incredibles. Something more incredible comes.
In a way, you're right, because it's just Incredibles 2.
In a world where you can just add a number. In a world where you can add a number to a movie and make it better. Incredibles 2. Baby lasers. By the way, I don't know anyone's names. I just know baby, dad, mother, sister, brother, costume lady, and the void.
How do you... What's it like to not know anything? You know everything but nothing all at the same time.
Right.
What's that like?
I think that my brain decided a while back that names of things wasn't relevant information.
But if it were only in fiction, that would be true. But you also don't remember names of actual people, and that is relevant information.
Well, here's the thing: if I just met you, I'm not gonna remember your name. If you become important to my life in some way, I'll make an effort.
You also told me you don't remember the names of your nieces and nephews. There's so many of them. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the new ones. I know the old ones. If anyone new coming out, forget it.
My nieces and nephews, I have... Okay, so my brother has 2 kids of his own, and he's got 3 kids of his own, and he just got married, and she's got 3 kids. So, that's 6 kids. My sister has 4 kids. I remember all their names. Okay. And you can't just chalk it up to being a detail-oriented person or not. It's not just details.
No. There was a time, believe it or not, I actually paid for and took a mega memory course.
Right, because you're always going, I'm looking at it in the movie in my head.
Yeah.
And I can remember that this is how it was.
I can look at it in my head, yes.
Yeah. But you're wrong a lot of the time.
Well,
that's not what the movie in my head looked like.
It's because I quit making... Well, because I'm remembering another...
The wrong thing.
The wrong movie.
Yeah, so what's the point?
What's the point?
I remember everything. I just don't know what it's related to.
So, there are ways, if I made an effort, I could remember names and all of this stuff.
I'm glad to hear you at least acknowledge it's lack of effort on your part.
Yes. I make 0 effort, and sometimes even when I do make an effort, my brain still says, "Oh, what you were serious?"
So wait a minute. We're not used to giving a shit. We have to remember this now?
Yeah. So that's my superpower, I guess.
Right, I was just about to say, what's your superpower? Lack of concern?
Apathy.
I'm the best at not giving a shit.
I'm Mr. Disabled. I have an excuse for every situation.
Which, by the way, is weird, because if you were the best at not giving a shit, you wouldn't want a superpower, let alone your superpower to be actual apathy.
My superpower is being disabled so I can get out of anything. And people are nicer to me.
What's your name again? I've known you for 12 years. Sorry, I'm disabled. Oh, yeah, right. Sorry, you bring that up and everybody starts to fidget a little bit. Like,
I can say blood sugar because...
blood sugar.
When my blood sugar's off, I can't... Words don't work. Okay, So,
welcome to Movieisms.
Yay!
This week we're doing our review on it's honestly our mutually most anticipated movie of the summer, actually.
Yeah.
And it's Incredibles 2. When Incredibles came out, it was great, it was fantastic, it honestly battled in my mind for the best Pixar movie, my favorite Pixar movie. But I still have a nostalgic place is Toy Story. Like, I have a hard time relinquishing my favorite spot from Toy Story.
Okay.
But when it came out, Pixar was still like, every movie they put out was like the best thing.
Yeah.
There was like Toy Story, Monsters Inc.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, everything. Since then, they've had a few ups and downs. It's not been quite as good, but something about they have the ability as a core group of people to tell like highly entertaining stories, like more than anyone else. So I always thought, if they were going to do a sequel to anything, Incredibles would be it. But they were only doing like Cars, which by the way is my least favorite Pixar thing. And
there's a third one out. They don't get better.
They don't. Yeah, so there's Cars and Monsters Inc., which is another great one that I love. I loved Monsters Inc. a lot.
Am I just creating a space in my head for a movie called Planes?
They already have one. They have one.
Okay.
It was called Planes.
Ugh.
And it was Cars, but with airplanes. And it's for here's the thing. Cars was for a much younger audience, intentionally for a younger audience. You'd think Toy Story and everything, it's for a younger audience, but those are really intended to be like family movies. But Cars was for like little boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. The first movie, Cars, was good.
I didn't care for it a lot. However, I did watch it and thought it was okay. It was the first movie we ever took my daughter to. She was like 2.5 or 3 years old, and she wanted to leave halfway through. But that isn't because she didn't like it. That was because she didn't understand that you go to the movies and sit and watch a movie. Later that night, she said, "Can we watch it again?" She thought it was on, 3-year-old. She thought it was on TV. We could just turn it on.
Oh, that's weird.
But over the years, they didn't make an Incredibles sequel, and I kept thinking, it seems like a prime, because that if any story of the Pixar universe begs to be extended, or you know what I mean, it's Incredibles. Like, they end on a cliffhanger in a way.
Do you have any idea why now? Why it took so long?
I heard an interview with Brad Bird on the Variety podcast with Christopher Tapley, which I listen to a lot. He said there was no reason they waited for 15 years. He just ended up, personally, since he's the author of that thing, he just ended up doing other things that he never intended for it to be 15 years, and he always kind of had a sequel idea, and it was this. It's changed a little bit over the years, but
yeah, I saw a little article that was talking about how now that we're in the Marvel universe, with all the movies post Avengers, that the movie that they had, it affected Incredibles, how they made it. So whatever story he had before, now he had to look at Incredibles 2 from the eye of, okay, we've seen all these movies, we're used to all of this. How do we, we can't come under par. We've got to match an Avengers level of fun or adventure or something.
Yeah. Was it, what you mean, because some discussion in Incredibles 2 is the destruction that comes in the wake of superheroes.
Right.
Is that what he's talking about?
Yeah. I believe so.
It seems like everyone's complaint in every superhero movie is only the destruction that superheroes have, And it's weird to me. I get it. I do get it. However, it's weird to me that they're like, look at the mess they make every time they come out and solve a problem. But in the very beginning, this movie first starts out like right where the thing left off, like right where Incredibles, the first one, left off. It picks right back up with like the Underminer. Like it starts just just then. It starts right then when that movie ended. It picks right back up in Incredibles 2. Like, what destruction did they think? It's almost like they blame all of the destruction on the villain, from the villain, on the superheroes just because they can. But if the superheroes hadn't come to stop it, the Underminer would be destroying everything anyway.
Well, not to the extent or necessarily the area, because I think it's all about, because I've been watching superhero stuff for a long time, and that came up in Justice League, like Justice League Unlimited. There was a animation that was out for a while. That was a big deal. Like you have to be, what do you call it? Exercise. Not caution, but you need to be a responsible superhero. Yeah. So think ahead. You know, they evaluate every, after something happens, they evaluate, you know, what you could have done. And a lot of the superheroes would end up, whenever something was going on, the rest would be going around saving people or saying, don't go over there, or, you know, getting them out of the way because buildings falling and all of that shit. So yeah, that is a big deal. And they showed in Incredibles 2 how, because the guy jumped in to do his man stuff, he made it a little worse because the Underminer jumped out of the whatever that machine was, and then it was like out of control, which made more of a mess than if they had just left him alone. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. There is a point to it, because every time I see, it's been like this for over a decade now. Whenever I see superheroes doing stuff, I'm like, oh, 20 people died there. Oh, that's 100 people dead. But they don't show that or talk about it at all.
You'd think that filmmakers would find another way for them to have to fight the battle. Like, because it's actually post 9/11 stuff. Like, after 9/11, we have been obsessed with like mass destruction. Yeah. The cities are always being destroyed. Like iconic buildings are always being brought down to the ground. And you'd think that they'd come up with another, like maybe, like, but because every superhero movie does involve destroying a city somehow. Yeah. Well, not everyone, but a lot of them do. And it does get, oh, okay, well, this is the 20-minute conclusion of the movie where they're going to destroy the city, okay, and get the bad guy.
Yeah, it's sort of like whenever cops go on a high-speed chase, they can't really engage them. They have to worry about the safety of everyone else around them. So they don't. They stay back, but tail them until they can get to a safe area, and then engage and then try and disable the vehicle. So much in that way, the superheroes have to. Their first thought needs to be, how can I get this away from people? How can I? Because most of the time the battles just happen wherever you're at. So that's a thing that I've seen a lot recently. Is hero having to think of, okay, we can't do this here because, and they've done that. What was that? The Superman versus Batman. In those string of movies, they were showing how people were dying because of stuff that was going on. They even did that in Marvel with the Scarlet Witch. Was it Age of Ultron, I think, where she accidentally killed people in the building? Yeah. So I like that trend because
of them having to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it too, but they still continue to just destroy buildings.
Yes.
However,
I want to see more people like, let's get out of here. You save that, and Yeah.
However, we're talking about Incredibles 2, which doesn't have a whole lot of that as it is.
Yeah. But that's why they chose Holly Hunter. I don't know the character's name, but
Holly
that's why
Hunter
they
is Elastigirl.
That's why they chose Elastigirl, because she was more responsible, and her power wasn't about strength, it was about flexibility, so she was more able to do her thing without a lot of damage.
Yeah, well, something you see in the trailers, they select her to go off to be to represent superhero. Okay, so let's give a premise to the movie. So the premise to the movie is that superheroes are illegal. It's illegal to practice superheroism. But there's, following the occurrences of Incredibles, there is a growing trend of people saying, "Oh, we need superheroes." So there's a growing desire for they're back in the civilians' good graces, like oh yeah, the superheroes saved the day. We need to have superheroes again. So Bob Odenkirk comes in and says, "I've got this plan to make being superhero legal again," and he says for his front woman, this running, the thing is Elastigirl. And you're right. The thing they said is one of the leading reasons for why is because Mr. Incredible's track record is more destructive than hers.
Yeah.
She's a little more savvy and elegant and trickstery, than
right.
Elegant, I guess, is the way.
It's the whole engaging thing. If you engage the enemy too soon, then you risk collateral damage wherever you're at. Where Elastigirl would kind of wait until it was safer.
So she goes off and starts doing superhero stuff. It's still illegal.
Yeah.
And
the baby starts.
The baby starts doing
showing
stuff.
powers.
So I don't remember the first movie being. I've seen the movie a bunch of times, but I don't remember finding the first movie quite as funny. This movie was truly funny. I mean, laugh out loud funny in more than one spot.
And that's rare. It's rare for both of us, but rarely do I see you laugh out loud and several times.
Yeah.
Really enjoying a movie.
Yeah. And you never laugh. You don't laugh at anything.
No. Unless it's just out of the blue, awkward. If you're not supposed to laugh at it, and then I'll laugh, and then people will think, "What are you laughing at?"
Yeah, like Pulp Fiction when the guy gets his head blown off.
Yes.
Yeah. Stuff you're not supposed to
That's
laugh at.
LOL.
That's funny. Yeah, man, you gotta admit, that's funny. When the guy gets his face shot off, that's hilarious. Yeah. No, but this movie is visually stunning. It's got some really cool stuff. We know that, through the trailer that the main villain in this is somebody called the Screenslaver. And the TV screens,
that's a very clever name.
It is cool, and you could tell just a little bit from the trailer that he's sort of throwing out a hypnotic trance through his screens, and he's able to manipulate people and put them into lock them down so that they just start just deer in headlights sort of,
or obeying commands.
Yeah. And because of the TV screens, the flickering and the static and everything, it's very cool looking a lot of the times. There's one battle, I'm going to say maybe halfway through, maybe 20 or 30 minutes in, where there's flickering monitors and it creates this strobing effect. And as it's happening, it's very, very cool to look at. It's so visually stunning that you forget you're watching a cartoon. I know to call it a cartoon is a little it's dumbing it down just a little bit, but you're watching an animated movie. But in moments like that, you forget you're watching something animated, and they're doing something that has not been done before in an animated movie. And it's amazing to me that they, after all this time, they can keep finding new ways to impress you with the way the things look.
Yeah.
I was watching this, and I kept saying, "This looks real. That shot looks real."
Yeah, you said that out loud.
That don't look real in this are the character design. They don't look like human beings. They're humanoids, but they don't look like human beings because they're differently shaped. They're almost shaped like Art Deco from the 60s.
Yeah.
But the environments they're in look real. How do they do it? I don't know. it's lighting and shading and some just artistry, but it's incredible what they can do. So you liked the movie, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you enjoyed it a lot more than I did.
Really?
It's great, but you were just elated over
it's
there.
It's weird because I was so, well, you get 10 or 15 minutes into the movie and you're so relieved that it's not going to be that it's not a bad sequel. Mm-hmm. The movie literally did start off right where the last one ended, and it continued into it. The story unfolded so well and organically that it didn't feel forced. And it didn't feel like, oh, they're doing this because they wanted to do an Incredible sequel because they've done Toy Story sequels and everything. Like, it was a real story that continued the story of these people.
I was very happy to see that they introduced a lot of different people with different powers.
Yeah,
I think that was another thing that post Avengers Incredibles 2 is that they needed more superheroes and villains and more things going on, because all the kids and just the audience has been almost overexposed.
They've been pummeled.
Been pummeled with superhero stuff. Which was one of the great things that I really enjoyed, was the creative use of power. They weren't just having people use powers; they had logical sense to them. Like Void's power, she was able to get under the daughter's shields. I don't know the daughter's name. Under her shields, and so the daughter would do something with the shield, and she'd go underneath it, or she'd put the portal under the daughter so that she fell through the floor and somewhere else where she wanted her out of the shield. So I was like,
and is it wherever she points her hands? Wherever she points her hands, the two things happen. Yeah. She has to make what do you call it? An in and an out. Yeah.
So the first one would be like an in that sucks you in, and then she can decide where the out will be.
So there's a new character named Void who's got, I think, probably some of the coolest powers.
Yeah.
And she uses them well. Like you were just saying, very strategic use of the powers.
Yeah, there was a couple parts where somebody would go to punch. She'd put the portal right in front of the fist, and then the out portal would be
right by their face.
By their face, and he'd punch himself.
Yeah. Stuff like that. It's funny, entertaining, but also, if you have powers like that, that is something you could do as a defense mechanism, as to fight back. Mm-hmm. She was cool. She was more you. That's the only thing you really exclaimed at. You heard, so like every time she did anything, like, that's cool, and the whole theater's like, who's that? Miss Kingston?
Who's that girl talking?
Why is that girl? Tell that girl to shut up. That's cool. But so Incredibles is fun. It's it unfolds and it's nonstop, and you do get to see probably my favorite part, and it's like right after they pick Elastigirl to go be the what's the word I'm thinking of,
spokes
the
hero?
The spokes hero, but that's not one that, like, the main person they were going to move forward with is like, you got to see her do her thing by herself a little bit.
Yeah, you also
that was cool. Like, some of her stuff she did on her own was so cool, and you can see she never should have been under the Mr. Incredible tier. It's Mr. Incredible than her just because she was married.
Yeah.
The whole male female mom dad husband wife dynamic never needed to be that way. She is a badass all by herself, and she's got some cool stuff that she can do, and she did not struggle at all to solve her mission, whatever that was, early on.
The creativity and the exploration of the different uses of their powers was my favorite part. That's why she was so enjoyable to watch her alone, because you could see her use her ability in 20 different ways that you didn't think of. Like, how is she going to get over there? Oh, she can rubber band and do this thing, and then how's she going to do that? Oh, wow, she can,
Yeah, stuff that honestly you don't really see in like Avengers movies. Hulk smash. That's Hulk only smashes. Iron Man,
shoots lasers.
He shoots laser beams, and he does stuff, and he's got an answer for everything. He doesn't seem to have to be clever with his stuff. He's smart. You know, he's smart. He's scientific, and he's brilliant, genius, billionaire, all that stuff. But you don't see him. He basically, like, Elastigirl has one power. She's elastic, but she has to figure out how to turn that into everything she can do, and she uses it in many different ways, as opposed to having sometimes, and I feel like it is kind of lazy writing. A lot of times it gets leaned on as a crutch in superhero movies. You see them, suddenly they just go to their utility belt and they have the one thing that they just so happen to need that they've never had before, but suddenly they've got this thing that will do exactly what they need it to do. She doesn't have that. She has one power she can stretch. And Mr. Incredible, he's got one power. He does go in like a bull in a china shop. But their daughter can do cool stuff. Their kid can run around fast, and he can do all kinds of things because he's fast, not just run away or run towards something. But they use their powers in creative ways, which is so much more fun to watch than because they do get into situations you're like, how are they gonna, and I think it's something that's in the trailer. You see there's a runaway train in this movie, and you think, how is Elastigirl going to do that? She's just elastic. So if she were to grab onto a train, she would just stretch. She's not strong. She stretches. She's just going to stretch, and it doesn't really do much.
It was really awesome what they did with her bike. It's a specialty bike where she could just front part and back part could just go wherever.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah. It's fun to watch. It's creative. What I like about The Incredibles from the start, from the very beginning, and from the first movie, is it feels like it fits into a movie, a time in the past, but also it's in the past, but also futuristic. I like that they didn't jump forward. Some people are like, oh, it picks up right where it left off. It's 15 years later. But if they had done that, they instantly would have had a slightly older version of the kids.
Yeah, and the baby wouldn't have been fun.
And the baby, I feel like the baby, who you can tell from the trailer, they lean pretty heavily on the baby, especially in the comedic moments.
Yeah, but that's what I wanted.
The baby was so funny. And
it was great.
And it was repeatedly funny. It wasn't like, again with the baby and his powers, but the baby kept coming up, Jack kept coming up with powers that you're like, what is it? And you don't know, is he just sort of like growing into his power and it hadn't picked its place because he's got raw like superhero energy in him, or are those all his powers? Is he like just like what, I don't even know what you'd call him. He's a shapeshifter, I guess. Is part of what he does is shapeshifting. Mm-hmm. But he has no control over it. He's just a baby. He can't walk. He can barely walk. All that stuff. The way babies do, they can't do anything. His superpowers are just like a raw nerve. They're just like out there. Mm-hmm. It's so funny watching them try to figure out how to control him.
Yeah.
Because you can't control a baby. Baby does what baby wants.
That's what was. It was sort of a visual metaphor of what it's like with a real baby, like the temper and the volatility and all of a sudden he's gone. Where did he go? How did he do that? I enjoyed kind of flashing back to when I would see those powers. I'd be like, "Yep, I've experienced similar things without powers."
Again, we were when we talked about Hereditary last week. We talked about how Hereditary could be basically if you remove the horror element of Hereditary, mm-hmm. it could really just be a family drama about grief, people suffering through grief, and Incredibles can be, if you remove the superhero element out of it. It really is, and they're not. I don't even consider them a dysfunctional family. I consider them a normal family. They have angsty teenager. They have a highly capable son who's sort of cocky and arrogant and wants to prove himself. And then you have the male-female mom-dad dynamic of the dad. So dad is not just egotistical. Dad is he feels like that's his place to go be the breadwinner.
Yeah.
Like he wants to make, and the mom is sort of like, well, women, girl power, we can do it too,
Yeah.
And the dynamic of that is funny, and it provides a lot of humor because they put Bob Parr, that's Mr. Incredible's name for those of you that can't remember, it's like fish out of water the whole time because he's not used to it. And
yeah,
it really
he's
does.
having to figure out how
He's
to
having
take
to figure
care
out
of
how
the
to be
baby.
Mr. Mom, and yeah.
And it would have been bad enough if it was just a normal baby, but then he has to
Yeah.
deal with laser baby and fire baby.
And it's funny because you saw Mr. Incredible really learning how to be the mom, for lack of a better word, I guess, the domesticated parent, and you actually saw and actually have respect, sort of grow respect for what his wife had done all those years while he was out being insurance, like selling insurance or whatever it was he was doing in the first movie.
Yeah, I loved how exhausted and tired and
more tired than being a superhero would ever make you. Yeah.
And he didn't care about anything at one point, and I kept looking at you, and I said, "That's you. That's you when you come home from work."
Yeah, and not Miss Incredible, Elastigirl, Helen, or is it Helen or Ellen? I think it's Helen. So she also, you see her out struggling with the feeling that she gets from actually maybe not the guilt, but I guess I'll call it guilt of what she feels like not being home for the first time, really. Like she had to leave her kids at home. When I first got divorced, I relate to that a little bit. I think I recognize it because of this. When I first got divorced, we have an amicable divorce. It's not blah blah blah, all that stuff. But your kid is suddenly not with you 24 hours a day. Like my daughter, like my sole purpose for existing, like go to work, put food on the table and all that stuff for your kid. So for a long time, I wouldn't even let myself relax on days that I didn't have her because I didn't even want to let myself be happy to have a day off, because that in my mind was still wired as, oh, you mean you don't want to have your kid here, sort of thing. You know what I mean? So the guilt that comes from actually going off, like when we make movies and stuff, I have to put my parental thing aside for maybe a day or a couple days or a week or something while we're working on a movie. The guilt that comes with that is very real. Because you don't want your kids to think, oh, you like this thing better than you like me. Mm-hmm. But it's real, and she was going through that a little bit, I felt, and it was cool to see. That's very real parent moments. Set all the superhero stuff aside. That's very real stuff to have to go through, and I think that's something that Pixar does better than anybody else. Like Inside Out, Up, all those things are like they deal with real emotions, and even if they simplify them down to Mr. Incredible's deal and then Elastigirl's thing, they simplify them down to a very simple thing, but they get into very broad emotional stuff. And I think that's why, at least for me, that's why I respond to Pixar movies so well, is because they, again, and I've talked about it just a lot last week too, like they take an emotional route over spectacle, the spectacle. And so when they do get into their fights or their superhero battles or whatever, it's grounded in these people they might have spectacular powers, but they're still humans. You still really care about them as people, and it is fun to watch. So,
ultimately, I think we both think it's great. I feel like you would give it a 5-star.
Yeah, I probably would give it a 5-star. There's a couple of things I'm going to talk in spoilers which we forgot to mention again, but we're going to do a spoiler talk at the end of this after the show is over, and there's a couple of things that I have not issues with, but that keep it from being totally fresh thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to talk about that in spoilers.
It was predictable.
Well, there's a couple of spots, yeah.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly love the movie. I don't even want to say I have problems with it in spoilers and make it sound like I'm giving it, But it was a fun movie from start to finish.
There's really not much to criticize or really any need to criticize. It's just a fun, enjoyable movie. All ages, from adult to kid, you can enjoy the hell out of Incredibles.
I remember
Incredibles 2.
I remember when I was a kid and I was growing up, and you reach a certain point where you're like a teenager, and then The Lion King comes out, and you're like, yeah, it's a Disney movie, it's a cartoon, whatever. Like I went through a period where I was like, I was not gonna go see an animated film because it was a kid movie. The Pixar movies do really good at not being a kids movie just because they're animated.
Right.
Those days are gone because the audience, what I think happened is the audience got way more sophisticated in the 90s and 2000s. What got way more sophisticated, and the parents, that's why Disney animation died, is because they started, not died, but why they struggled in that little window, in my opinion, is because they were pandering to the kid audience.
Yeah.
And it was like talking down to the kid, like silly stuff or whatever. Like Lion King, that is a true family movie. I finally did go back and see The Lion King. Not finally, but I eventually saw it, and it's a great movie. And it's because there are family themes in there, and it's an entertaining movie, and it's a well-told story, and it's an emotional story that doesn't just say, hey kids, look, I can smack myself in the head and be silly and blah, blah, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That you saw for a while there in certain things, and that there really wasn't any, there's no subtext, there's no deeper meaning to some of those movies, and people stopped going to see them because they weren't interesting. And the reason that happened is because when Pixar came out, and they were on their own basically for a while there, when Pixar came out and they were doing things like Toy Story and even A Bug's Life and Monsters, Inc., those movies were tapping into something that the Disney animated films and the other animated films weren't doing, which was telling a believable story, even if it's spectacular things happening in the thing. There was not grounded in emotion or anything like that.
They were telling human stories with non-human characters.
Yeah. Like a toy that has feelings and all that stuff. It always is like, how do you get an audience to connect with an inanimate object?
Like a lamp.
Like a lamp. Like their lamp. Yeah. Lux, their lamp. So we were also going to talk a little bit about what our favorite Pixar movies were. And I've already talked about it a little bit. I personally have a hard time picking.
I would say Finding Nemo. Probably. But Up is a close second.
Yeah.
Up and Finding Nemo would be fighting for top spot of best Pixar movie, in my opinion.
What is it you like about Finding Nemo?
The visuals.
Visually, it's beautiful.
And emotionally, the whole time, I'm just feeling all of it.
Is it the father-son thing? Because you were really close with your dad, yeah.
Yeah.
Finding Nemo, it's a great movie, I do, and it's visually stunning, the underwater stuff. I didn't like it. It didn't fall into my, when I saw it, I was sort of like, I like Monsters, Inc. better,
I like Up better.
Up is a great movie too. However, I've only seen it a couple of times and I can't really comment on it.
I like WALL-E because it was good social commentary.
Yeah. Plus, wasn't like the first half of it like totally silent, like a silent film?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, they find a way, like in WALL-E, which is a movie that, again, I think I've only seen WALL-E once. It wasn't something that stuck with me. A lot of people consider WALL-E their favorite Pixar movie, but again, an inanimate object, you feel so much for that robot when he's on that planet alone. Mm-hmm. You feel so much for him, and he's just nuts and bolts.
Yeah, it's just software.
Yeah.
It's an app on your phone, and you care about it.
I really do. I think my recent favorite was Inside Out. However, my overall favorite, it's got to be the Toy Story. Just Toy Story in general. The not just the first one, but all of the Toy Stories.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah, and if we were talking about which one was a classic, I think we'd have to say Toy Story, because Toy Story was the 3D movie. It was the movie that
Started it all.
Started all of these other movies, and I remember it was so imaginative, and it was so refreshing to see exploration of sort of what goes on in a kid's head, I guess, or the imagination of a kid, and that toys have this secret life, maybe. I don't know, just very imaginative.
When that movie came out, I remember remembering when I saw that movie. Oh yeah, I used to wonder if my toys were. My imagination would run off and think, oh, my toys were. Hey, wasn't it in a different place than it was the last time I left it? Yeah. It seems like my toys moved. Like, are my toys? And I remember when I saw that movie, I remember thinking, oh yeah, I used to think that as a kid.
I used to think I had a stuffed teddy bear, and sometimes I would wrestle it and be rough, and then I would get scared after, thinking, oh, what if I hurt it and it's mad at me now and it tries to choke me in my sleep? I used to have nightmares, actually, where things would come to life and come after me.
There's a whole generation of people that will not let you leave toys under the bed now. Like, that's where I used to put stuff when I was cleaning my room. Mm-hmm. But now you're like, oh, we can't put the toys under the bed because that's where they go to die. You know, it's like you can't, like from the Toy Story movies.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to Toy Story 4 because they have done such a good job of continuing the Toy Story story without ruining it. The third Toy Story was like the most emotional one, where they were all like going down into the little burner thing at the end, and they reach out and they're holding hands, and the melting, the heat flames are going up, and they're just like, and you're like, oh my God, I'm sitting there. So I saw it by myself. Yeah. I'm sitting there in the theater crying to myself at this movie about toys, and it's incredible that that's the third one in the series, because movies don't get better in their sequels. You know,
I remember getting mad at parts of Toy Story 3. I think because of scenes like that. Like, what are you?
So emotional.
What are you doing to kids? Because I was imagining kids seeing that and what they were feeling. So I got mad. Don't do this. But what's great, I think it's like a kid's love brings the toys to life. I think that's what it's really about. You know, love conquers all, or some kind of. I think that's the theme, which I think is what makes it precious.
Yeah. So back to Incredibles. We went off on a Toy Story tangent.
Well, it's not a Movieisms if we don't go on a tangent.
I thought Incredibles 2 was probably the most. I'm going to say probably the most satisfying movie I've seen, maybe even all year so far. You know, and we're getting into June, and if not just this year, in a long time. It was satisfying. It was fun to see the movie again. I was relieved because I'd been worrying for 2 or 3 years that I knew they were making it, that it was going to be a flop. It was going to be bad. Because Monsters University is a sequel to another movie that I really liked. Monsters, Inc. was great. And then Monsters University...
I don't even remember it.
It's not forgettable necessarily. It just wasn't...
It's not memorable.
It's not
forgettable, but not memorable.
It just wasn't a Monsters, Inc. It wasn't the Monsters, Inc., you know. It
wasn't until just now. Earlier I was thinking, was there a Monsters sequel? And then in my head I said no. And then you said Monsters University, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. But it wasn't.
But I've been worried that Incredibles 2 was going to be like of that variety. And it's been too long, and I wondered if they were going to be able to recapture it and all that stuff, and they really did. And they continued the story of this family like seamlessly. It was brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, but
all while being socially relevant today.
That was Incredibles 2 was exactly what I and I think everyone else wanted to see. Because at the end of the first Incredibles, when you see that the kid has powers, that's the next thing. That's all you can think about is, oh my God, what all would that, what craziness would happen if you had to take care of a baby with weird powers. So it was so much fun.
Yeah. So
don't shoot the baby in the house.
Laser. And when he goes laser baby, and he squeezes the baby to get the laser beams to shoot out of his eyes. Yeah. It's in the trailer too, so not really giving anything away. He's like laser baby, and he squeezes the baby's belly. The look on the baby's face.
Yeah,
it's hilarious. Well, that's it. That's it. We're gonna have spoiler talk right after this. So. Anything we want to tell them? If you're hearing us for the first time, you can go back and hear the rest of our episodes by going to movieisms.com and subscribing to our website. Not to our website, subscribing to our podcast. You can check us out on Stitcher. We're on Tune FM now. We're on a couple of different podcasting aggregators, podcast aggregators, but mostly iTunes. If you want to help us out, if you're enjoying this podcast and you really want to help us out, please hit us up on the iTunes podcast store where you can leave us a 5-star review, and it just helps us become more visible to other people. We show up more.
Talk with us. Come to our Facebook page. It's just Movieisms, right? Is it Movieisms yet?
Yeah, it's facebook.com/Movieisms.
Yes, Twitter. We're trying to do an Instagram thing.
Yeah.
So I'm posting thumbnails, but we need to. We'll start putting some live stuff on there too.
Yeah, we are going to. We're currently sitting in our what will be our Movieism studio.
Yes, we just.
And we're like, I'm going to say 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be able to start shooting in here. We're going to do some live stuff. We're going to do some different things for YouTube as part of our plan.
So, we'd hope to be like live at least once a week. We're going to be more active and do more fun stuff. So we want to, let's talk movies.
Yeah. As you can tell, that's our favorite thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Except when Brad's not here, I like to talk about him behind his back, but he doesn't know about that.
It's perfectly understandable. I am a handful.
All right. So, show's about to end. Stay tuned for spoiler talk at the end of this. We'll see you again next week.
The end.
Cut. Movieisms is a production of Super Mega Ultra Entertainment and is produced by Michael Beckemeyer and Bradley Kingston. If you'd like to find out more, follow us on Twitter or Instagram. And make sure you click like on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/movieisms. If you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment and give us a 5-star review in iTunes. It only takes a minute, and it helps us out more than you can imagine. Thank you very much, and until next time, we'll see you at the movies. Okay, so
spoilers.
Incredibles 2 spoiler talk.
If you left the podcast going and you're in the other room, hurry up and hit stop.
Yeah. Use your Elastigirl powers and swing around there and hit pause because we're going to talk. If you have not seen the movie and you do not want it spoiled for you, turn this section off.
Okay.
You've been adequately warned. The only thing, and you and I, you leaned over in the middle of the movie and said it to me. Well, you know it's the boss, right? That is the only real complaint. The only complaint I have about this movie is that it was clear ahead of time who the bad guy was.
Yeah, almost when they both came in. I assumed it was going to be the guy.
Yeah, the brother.
So the fact that it was the girl was, not what I expected. But yeah. I knew one of the two of them was going to be the bad guy.
Well, I had a feeling that it was the sister. I had a feeling it was Kathleen Kenner's. Because
the Odenkirk's character.
Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah, his character came off more genuine.
Yeah, I did get a very Syndrome vibe from Bob Odenkirk at first, because of how enthusiastic he was about superheroes and blah blah blah, and that almost made me think that that's why it wasn't going to be him, because why would they do the same thing twice? Because if you remember the very first part of Incredibles, the kid was just like, "Oh, guys, I love you guys. I want to be a superhero. Let me come along with you and ride along and all that stuff." And then he ended up being shunned by Mr. Incredible, so he became the bad guy. So I almost didn't credit him as being the bad guy because it reminded me of him. But I never trusted the sister character. Especially once she started latching on to Elastigirl and sister, the whole sister thing.
She was sowing discontent, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, I know what all these guys are saying, but blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. But that is the only complaint I have about that whole movie was that the villain wasn't cool, because the villain was very cool. It was the villain, it was predictable. The mystery of who the villain was a little easy for me to figure out. But it didn't ruin the thing, because you always expect it to be somebody that's already in the story anyway.
Yeah.
But that's the only complaint I have about it. Other stuff that we talked about Jack a lot, but the fight with the raccoon, I didn't want to talk about in the non-spoiler area.
Oh, I almost did.
The fight with the raccoon was so funny. The thing about the raccoon thing is that it kept going way longer than you expected it to. And it kept getting funnier and funnier and funnier. And then you see Jack split into like 5 different Jacks. And the raccoon just would not stop. It just kept getting funnier and funnier and funnier. And I love it when a movie can do that. Like we talked about it with Deadpool a couple weeks ago, how the scene with him with the baby legs went on longer than you expected, but because of that, somehow it kept getting funnier. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a joke can go on too long and it doesn't get funnier, but it can get funnier. When it does get funnier and funnier and funnier, it's so satisfying, because you start to think, oh my God, this scene is longer than you expect it to be, because it's also some unbelievable shit that the baby is going to actually sit there and like punch the raccoon and kick the raccoon back, but it kept getting funnier. It was so hilarious, and you actually couldn't hear. It was another moment in the theater where you couldn't really hear because people were laughing so hard you couldn't hear what people were saying in the scene. It was like perfect physical comedy, but animated.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. It was just a lot of fun. Favorite, we probably should have taken. Well, it's hard to talk about favorite moments without spoiling the movie.
My favorite moment in this movie was the Elastigirl saving the train thing. That scene was so cool. And a close second is, as I mentioned it, where she's fighting the screenslaver character in the little flickering strobe thing. Mm-hmm. That was so visually different from anything you've ever seen in a Pixar movie, that it was like, it caught you off guard. And it was like scary, kind of, because you couldn't really see everything, and it was violent. You said a couple times that your favorite, or I think your other favorite moment was when the Incredibles were fighting each other. Was it the father was fighting the mother? Which part was it? So before we go to that, I wanted to talk about the train thing. The motorcycle chase that she had, where she's trying to catch up with the train, and where you were talking about where you get to see her be badass on her own, and the motorcycle that splits in part and swings around, and she sort of uses the momentum of that was just so cool. And it felt like we're back in sort of like a subterfuge, like a spy movie, because she's not really covert. She's riding around in a red suit, on a black suit with a red motorcycle, so she's not really covert, but she's on a secret mission. It felt like the one thing of the spy movie that we got so much of in the first Incredibles that was cool. Mm-hmm. But just watching her do her thing and fight, and really fight and struggle and figure it out on her own, put her up there with, again, like we talked about, put her up there with Mr. Incredible. Oh, you see that she never really needed him. she just sort of slipped into the woman's role, air quotes, like the woman's role of the 60s, sort of time frame that this story is taking place in. But you see that she's perfectly capable on her own, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Sometimes she loved him, so she just gave him that space.
Mm-hmm. Well,
she let him.
She also knew in a very female intelligent way, women's intuition. She knew that he needed it more than she did.
Right.
So
you could see by this movie how just his life is.
Yeah.
I won't say destroyed, but his life was just turned upside down, and he didn't know how to handle it.
We talk a lot about, in our writing, we talk about self-esteem, like the moderate to fair self-esteem.
Yeah, how his self-esteem was gone.
Well, the thing about it is, her self-esteem is more stable than his. Mm-hmm. He's the one that's up there beating his chest, and like people mistake bravado or like that chest pounding thing as self-esteem, but it's really a lack of it. It's like, look at me, because you constantly have to reassure yourself. Somebody who's very set in their self-worth, like Elastigirl is in this movie, or in both of the movies actually. Her self-esteem's up here, like it's high, and you think, oh, you don't really believe in yourself. You got to put yourself back out there. And she's like, I don't need to put myself out there to know how my worth. You know what I mean? And it's a cool display of it. She just knew that he needed it more than she did, so she's like. Plus, he basically in the first movie lied to her and went off and did it anyway. So it's not like she gave him permission to. She was yelling at him to not do it the whole time. Mm-hmm. But that's an interesting it's like a very human dynamic of this superhero movie. But yes, when the superheroes started when they were in their trance and they started fighting each other, it wasn't really my favorite moment because it didn't go on long enough. But when they started battling each other, I thought this movie just got interesting because they're fighting each other, and how's that going to go? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think you specifically enjoyed the family fighting each other more than the all the superheroes.
But
but obviously we talked about it before. My favorite moments was Boyd. Seeing all the probably the last 30 minutes of the movie was my favorite part.
Good stuff. It was really good. Fun. It's a fun movie. I want to see it again because we didn't talk about this. We got to do a whole episode sometime about shitty movie theaters. We walked in the theater and I could see like the screen was wrinkly all the way across, like it wasn't like it had been stretched out or something over time.
You're like a really bad wrinkled shirt that no matter what you do, you can't get the wrinkles out.
It's like projecting onto a curtain, if you think about it.
Right,
and you could see all the shadows, like, particularly when you saw something white on screen, you could see, like, the shadows of the
rolls or the folds.
The folds of the thing. And it was like, we walked in, I was like, ugh, I'm going to be so distracted by that. And it didn't really ever go away.
Yeah.
But the movie was so good.
There were moments where we forgot about the screen.
Yeah. So it's really good. I loved it.
It was great. I mean, there really wasn't much more to say. It's just great. Everyone's going to see it. Like, regardless of what we think of this movie, everyone's going to see this movie.
If you love The Incredibles, if you love The Incredibles, it is the movie you want it to be.
I would almost dare to say it's better, even a little bit better than the first Incredibles.
You could say that. I want to see it. Before I say that myself, I want to see Incredibles again, and I couldn't find it anywhere on streaming or anything, and I thought I had a DVD of it, but I guess I don't.
I'm just going to call it and say we give it 5 stars.
Oh, yeah.
There's no reason not to.
There's no reason not to. Totally satisfying. We gushed about this movie ever since then. I've been thinking about it ever since then. Yeah. Anytime a movie does that, it really hit the sweet spot.
First time in a long time I've seen you actually giddy. You were giddy in the theater.
Yeah. And mad. You can see how upset I was over that wrinkled screen.
Oh, yeah.
Some shitty movie that I'm not just meh about. I wouldn't get so worked up about it, but it was going to ruin my experience.
Yeah. we didn't have a choice. It was like, okay, then we have to wait two more hours to go see the next one, and then we're stuck here all day.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's it. That's Incredibles. We're not sure what we're going to do next week. We might do a Jurassic World review because I'm really looking forward to doing a review on something I'm pretty sure I'm going to hate.
I'm expecting it to be like a 3-star, like, it was okay. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. It was
would
okay.
Be a great relief if it's only a 3-star.
I feel like the part where the dinosaur is chasing after the girl inside the house or whatever it is, that looks really exciting and intense.
Yeah.
I think there will be intense moments, but maybe overall it might not be great. Who knows?
They need to kill the dinosaurs and get it over with. Instead of going the debate on the dinosaur's life, just kill them. It was dumb. It was dumb from the first movie. Not that the first movie was dumb. I loved the first movie. The first movie is like the best. Like was one of the best movies I'd ever seen when that movie came out. But it was dumb that we had dinosaurs back in the world. It's a dumb choice. Like science playing God, man playing God thing just wasn't a good idea.
Well, by the way, I will never get over, in all the Jurassic movies, I will never get over pterodactyls. Because the whole thing was the island, keeping them the island so that they can't escape. Mm-hmm. But if you have pterodactyls, they could just fly and then procreate and then kill everything in the world.
They have them in the atrium, don't they? And that little like bird.
You just can't do it. Don't do it. No pterodactyls.
Well, maybe. My problem is the spelling of pterodactyls. Why is it called pterodactyls?
And then the huge gator thing. Why would you make that?
Why would you make that?
Oh God. Of course that's going to get out easily and then destroy everything.
So maybe we need to do a Jurassic World review next week.
It's going to be fun complaining about that movie.
All right, so that's it. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.